Hi and welcome. This Soviet premium tank sits at a battle rating of 11.7, and here's everything you should know about it before spending your money. It has a top forward speed of 70 kilometers per hour and a reverse speed of 11 kilometers per hour. Now, 11 kilometers per hour in reverse isn't great by any means, but it's still miles better than the two other Soviet premium tanks competing for your wallet, both of which can only go backwards at 4 kilometers per hour. Sure, 11 kilometers per hour is still painfully slow compared to NATO tanks, but it's just enough to pull back into cover after taking a shot. Unfortunately, this still means you can't reliably reverse out of danger, and in many situations where retreat is your only option, you'll be forced to turn your rear to the enemy and drive away forward, which is never ideal. That said, let's be honest. Most Soviet tank players aren't exactly known for playing carefully or trying to stay alive for long, but we'll get back to that a bit later. One of the standout features of this tank is its engine and how quickly it reaches top speed. The moment you press W, you're off. It only takes a couple of seconds to hit max speed. This allows you to consistently reach key positions either before your enemies or at the same time, which is incredibly important in high-tier matches with modern vehicles. With a stock crew, the turret traverse speed is 28 degrees per second horizontally and 3.1 degrees per second vertically. Once you upgrade your crew to expert, those numbers go up to 37.6 degrees horizontally and 4 degrees vertically. And with an ace crew, you'll max out at 40 degrees per second for horizontal traverse and 4.4 degrees per second for vertical. That 40-degree horizontal traverse speed is excellent. It's actually among the fastest you can get on any main battle tank in the game. But the vertical aiming speed, just 4.4 degrees per second even with an ace crew, and that's really bad. In fact, it's so sluggish that it'll not only feel frustrating in many situations, but it can also actively cost you shots, especially when trying to engage enemies positioned on hills or elevated terrain. You'll eventually get used to it, but the slow vertical adjustment is definitely one of this tank's main drawbacks. This tank comes with an autoloader, which gives it a fixed reload time of 6.5 seconds, completely independent of crew skills. That means you don't have to waste any crew XP on upgrading the loader, since the reload speed won't change. Now, 6.5 seconds is on the slower side. In one-on-one duels, you'll usually be out-reloaded by most opponents. For example, American tanks can get down to 5 seconds, and German ones can hit 6 seconds, assuming they have an ace crew. In reality, though, most players run with expert crews, so in practice, you'll often be up against American tanks with 5.3 seconds reloads, which still leaves you at a disadvantage. But when it comes to Leopards, your main and arguably toughest opponents, they sit at around 6.4 seconds, which is basically the same as you. So overall, your reload isn't amazing, but it's not terrible either. It's solid enough that you won't feel handicapped in most engagements. The gun depression on this tank is, well, Soviet. You only get 5 degrees of gun depression, which can definitely be a problem, especially for players who aren't too familiar with the maps or with positions that work well for Soviet vehicles. Personally, I don't struggle too much with limited gun depression, but you do have to accept that some of the best hull-down spots simply won't work for you. In some cases, it'll be awkward, in others, completely unplayable. And keep in mind, poor gun depression combined with a mediocre reverse speed often leads to one specific problem. You peek, you shoot, and then you eat a return shot. Unless you double-check enemy positions before moving out, you'll frequently find yourself in situations where someone's already pre-aiming, just waiting for you to crest the hill. The main shell you'll be using in battle is pretty underwhelming when compared to what other tanks at this battle rating are firing. Its maximum penetration is 532 millimeters, which isn't terrible, but definitely on the lower end for 11.7. That said, at top tier, you're supposed to aim for weak spots anyway. If you just center mass everything and hope for the best, even 600 plus millimeters won't save you. To be fair, I've never really had an issue with this shell. It does enough damage when you place your shots well. You also get access to anti-tank guided missiles, but they're not very practical. Their velocity is nearly 5 times slower than your main round, and you have to manually guide them the entire way by keeping your aim on target. In my experience, they're more of a gimmick than a useful tool, and I rarely find a reason to use them. You can also bring a couple of high explosive shells just in case. They're handy in the right situations. Thanks to their arc-like trajectory, you can lob them over ridgelines or try to land shots on the roofs of enemy tanks. They're especially effective against lightly armored targets, anything from self-propelled anti-aircraft vehicles to light tanks. Sometimes you'll even spot an enemy radar sticking out, and in those cases, high explosive shells are exactly what you want to use to knock it out. There are a few secondary features that are still worth pointing out. First, the roof-mounted 12.7mm machine gun is great for clearing out obstacles like bushes, fences, and other clutter that might block your view or mess with your aim. It also does a surprisingly good job of damaging enemy tracks, so if you ever find yourself in a hopeless situation, you can at least try to leave your opponent immobilized and stuck in repair mode before they finish you off. This tank also has excellent optics. When switching to sniper mode, you get a nearly perfect panoramic field of view, which makes aiming and tracking targets feel smooth and natural. On top of that, your gunner has a thermal sight with great image quality, making it easy to spot enemies even at long distances. Unfortunately, the commander doesn't have access to a thermal sight, so when you're playing hull down or scanning for threats from behind cover, you'll still need to rely on the good old binoculars. And don't forget, you're equipped with an engine smoke generation system. It's extremely useful in close quarters engagements and can often help you outplay your opponent in a duel. Before we move on, I just want to take a moment to thank all of you for watching my videos, leaving comments, and helping the channel grow. It really means a lot. And hey, don't forget to check the comments section. That's the perfect place to share your own thoughts about this tank or read what others think. For example, in my previous video about a French premium tank, my opinion was completely different from what most viewers were saying. While I was explaining why I didn't like it, tons of people jumped in to tell me I was wrong, and honestly, they made some great points. So yeah, reading the comments can actually be super helpful, especially before you drop a bunch of money on a premium vehicle. And of course, massive thanks to the absolute legends who hit the join button and became channel members. Your support really means the world to me, and I appreciate every single one of you. Now let's talk about the armor on this tank. When you get lucky and end up in a down tier against vehicles with a battle rating of 10.7, the armor can actually hold up surprisingly well. It's capable of soaking up a lot of hits. But you need to remember that, like most Soviet tanks, it shares some very familiar weak spots. The top of the turret is one of them. A shot right in the middle can disable the breach and sometimes even knock out your commander or gunner. Another reliable shot is straight through the gunner's optics. That can do serious damage. And the third one is the commander's optics, again, a known weak point. Shells with around 400 millimeters of penetration can be pretty inconsistent against this tank. Sometimes they'll do nothing at all, even if you hit a weak spot dead on. But once you're dealing with shells that have 500 millimeters or more of penetration, randomness goes out the window, and the T-80 is no longer able to just eat the shot with its armor. Another weak spot on this tank is the driver's optics. But in actual battles, it's almost impossible to hit, unless you're sitting still, which you really shouldn't be. And sometimes RNG will be on your side. Even if the enemy lines up a perfect shot right on the driver's optics, the shell might just refuse to do any damage at all. Of course, the easiest way to one-shot any Soviet tank is still the same: a shot right into the lower front plate, dead center. In most cases, that's an instant kill. To the left and right of the driver, you've got fuel tanks, and like with most Soviet tanks, they're a total RNG mess. Sometimes they blow up, sometimes they just catch fire, and other times they absorb all the shrapnel and act like extra armor. You never really know what you're gonna get. Speaking of extra armor, right in the center of the tank, there's a massive autoloader carousel. This is actually a recent change for Soviet tanks. In the past, there were just loose shells sitting there, and any penetrating shot to that area usually meant instant ammo detonation. But now, the autoloader acts as a layer of protection. It can sometimes completely absorb around that before would have gone straight into the unprotected ammo rack and turned your tank into fireworks. The upper front plate of the hull is extremely tough. Even high-penetration shells rarely make it through. So honestly, there's no point in shooting at it. And of course, the turret cheeks are just as strong, practically immune to most shells at this battle rating. If you take a look at the protection map, it becomes pretty clear this tank has serious armor that can genuinely take a beating. The armor on this tank, combined with the sheer number of internal modules, turns it into an absolute beast that can be surprisingly hard to kill. Right now, high-tier matches are full of new players who simply don't know where to shoot or how to properly deal with heavily armored targets, and that works to your advantage. A lot of my viewers know I like to joke about Soviet tanks, and in general I don't consider them particularly strong, but I've got to admit, this one is more on the good tank side than the bad. It forgives a ton of mistakes and survives situations where no NATO tank would have a chance. If someone asked me which Soviet premium to pick for grinding the entire tech tree, I'd absolutely recommend this one. Great top speed, fantastic acceleration, excellent horizontal turret traverse, and strong armor. That's a solid package. Sure, you pay the price with bad reverse speed and poor gun depression, but overall, this tank holds its own extremely well in battle. I hope this video helped you decide whether or not it's worth spending money on this vehicle. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.